Modernism was a break with the past and the concurrent search for new forms of expression. Which of the following is true in context of the above statement? Here, option number one, modernists were bored of following older traditions and thought of bringing a change by establishing new traditions. See, modernists were not bored, of course. They believed in rejecting the then prevailing conventions, paving a way for the new ideas in the society, right? So that's the correct thing here. Then we look at option two. Modernists believed that after the World War, it was important to have a universality in art and culture. Yes, modernists wanted to highlight the after effects of world wars and the kind of impact it left on people in art and culture. But here we must try to question if this is the only concern. Then we look at option three. It says modernists were of the view that all art forms need to be synchronized with the morality, optimism, and conventions established in the Victorian era. No, not synchronized really. They rejected the Victorian ideas and morality definitely. Then we have option four. Modernists felt a growing alienation incompatible with Victorian morality, optimism, and convention. Yes, definitely. Modernists did feel a growing alienation with Victorian morality and their set of then prevailing conventions. So, our option number four, that is, modernists felt a growing alienation incompatible with Victorian morality, optimism, and convention, is the correct answer. Since the question is which of the following is true in context of the above statement. So option 4 is the correct answer. Order of PQRS set to complete the paragraph. So you have option 1 and then you have option number 6 and then you're given 4 sub options, that is PQRS, and you're supposed to fit those 4 sub options in 2, 3, 4 and 5. Right, so here one says the phrase Celtic revival describes past movements in literature, the arts, and social practices in which legends, poetry, art, and spirituality of a distinctive kind were revived. And then you have 2, 3, 4, 5 that you're supposed to fill. And then we have sixth one, which says it was also evident in art, design, music, and sport. And then you have 4 other sub options, that is PQRS. Let's read them. P says the most significant Celtic revival took place in Ireland toward the end of the 19th century and into the first 2 decades of the 20th century. Q says writers and artists identified these with the Celtic people in parts of pre-Christian and early Christian Europe. R says the Irish revival was felt most strongly in literature, drama, and the Irish language. Good. S says it is commonly referred to as the Irish revival, though it has also been considered a Celtic revival in Ireland that had associations with revival movements in Scotland, Wales, the English regions, and Brittany. Choose the correct answer from the options given below. Right, so here first of all we must try to understand what this word Celtic refers to. The word Celtic, C-E-L-T-I-C, that you can see here, originally came from this Latin word which is called Celtus, C-E-L-T-U-S, Celtus, which is majorly used by historians. This word Celtus, okay, it's majorly used by historians to denote people from 6 Celtic nations, okay. Number 1 is called Britain, number 2 is called Ireland, 3 is called Scotland, and then we have Wales, and then we have Cornwall, and then we have Isle of Man. So these are 6 Celtic nations, okay. Now if we look at PQRS, our 4 sub options, in the similar fashion, you see number one, or option one, it says the phrase Celtic revival describes past movements in literature, the arts, and social practices in which legends, poetry, art, and spirituality of a distinctive kind were revived. Right, so that's our option one. Now we are supposed to fill 2, 3, 4, and 5 with P, Q, R, and S. So, if you look at Q, first of all, see, writers and artists identified these with the Celtic people in parts of pre Christian and early Christian Europe. What is it trying to describe? It is trying to explain Celtic cultures, right? So we put Q first since it's trying to give us the beginning of how it all started. So writers and artists identified these with the Celtic people in parts of pre-Christian and early Christian Europe. Then we have option 3 that we are supposed to fill. Let's look at P, or another sub option. The most significant Celtic revival took place in Ireland towards the end of the 19th century and into the first 2 decades of the 20th century. Why are we putting this here? Because of increasing nationalism that was taking place in Ireland during 19th and the beginning of 20th century, which was later also followed by the construction of Abbey Theatre in Ireland. Okay, so here we put P as our next sub option, that is the most significant Celtic revival took place in Ireland. Right, I just told you why. Because of increasing nationalism in Ireland in 19th century and in the beginning of 20th century as well. Okay, and then we move on with our other option, which says um, look at the S1. It is commonly referred to as the Irish revival. Since we just spoke about Ireland, so we put S following what we just spoke about, that is P. So it is commonly referred to as what? Irish revival. Why? Since it comes from Ireland. And why from Ireland? Because of increasing nationalism. Right? So easy. And then we have our final take, which is R, that is, the Irish revival was felt most strongly in literature, drama, and the Irish language. So here we're trying to bind up our entire thing. So R comes in the end. So the correct answer here is Q, B, S, R. That is option number 2. One is labeled as assertion, that is A, and the other is labeled as reason, that is R. So, A says Romanticism of the Indian poets was different from English Romanticism since the former was fraught with nationalism, spirituality, and mysticism. Okay. Then R says while Aurobindo searched for the divine in man, quest of Tagore's poetry was the beautiful in man and nature. Right, I'll tell you one thing now. Three great personalities behind Indian Romanticism were 1. Sri Aurobindo Ghosh, 2. Rabindranath Tagore, and 3. Mahatma Gandhi. So, if you look at A, assertion, Romanticism of the Indian poets, yes, it was different from English Romanticism since it was fraught with nationalism, spirituality, and mysticism. Aurobindo Ghosh, Tagore, and Mahatma Gandhi. Their main elements were the search for divine, okay, search of that ultimate reality. And this is why, and this is how it was also fraught with nationalism, spirituality, and mysticism too. Then, if we look at reason, that is, while Aurobindo searched for the divine in man, Aurobindo Ghosh wrote a work which was called The Life Divine, and it very much explores the higher realities of life. And then it says, the statement says, quest of Tagore's poetry was the beautiful in man and nature. Tagore always talked about the higher realities, the belief in higher realities, and human beings' ability and capacity to serve and surrender and find meaning in that process. So Tagore's poetry was about the beautiful in man and nature. Like I said, man for serving the nature, and nature, of course, relates to the higher realities here. So A is also true, R is also true. Now, if you look at our correct options, that is option 1, both A and R are correct. Like I said, both A and R, assertion and reason, they're correct. And R is the correct explanation of A. That is when we say that Aurobindo searched for the divine in man, yes, it is true.